Well, good morning, everyone. This is Sophia Lynn coming to you with another morning moment. I'm going to be recording them instead of writing long posts. For one reason is I want to start posting these on my YouTube channel. Back when I started my YouTube channel back in 2013, I think it was, I started it with a series called How I Did It. It was the first I guess you could say, first of coming out from what had been happening, the beginning of this transition, which is just now ending. I talked about how the transition started back in 2005, around that time, and I've been kind of telling bits and pieces. Then now here it is 20 years later, and I'm just coming out of it, just really beginning to understand what it was. But I made this series in 2013 because I thought I had reached a threshold of coming out of it and finally putting my life back together. And it was really only the end of phase one, the beginning of phase two. So I'm going to be completing this series now, 20 years later or 10 years later, and part of it is the morning moment today. So it's been a few days since I posted a morning moment, and it's because a lot's been happening. And it's one of those things where you go through these phases, and I'm also realizing that it's being triggered and influenced significantly by the ascension process. And that part of what I'm going through is my call back into action from the universe to help a lot of people that are going through this. So here it is, and hopefully it's not too long. As I discussed in a previous post, our world and us are in the chrysalis, in the mush, just like the monarch butterfly goes from a caterpillar, earthbound caterpillar, into this beautiful being that can fly. We are too. We're transforming from the land-based caterpillar to the butterfly, the being with wings who can fly and touch down to earth at will. A lot has changed in the last couple of weeks, and I've changed in ways I can actually see and in other ways that I can feel but aren't visible. I'm very grateful for all that has transpired because it's broken the bonds that held me captive for the last 20 years. One of those bonds was the belief that as we age, we should adopt an attitude of slowing down, aging with the expectation that our bodies are failing, and letting go of our power to younger generations. Society has taught us this lie, and we bought into it. But have you noticed that those in power with wealth don't do the same thing? They haven't bought into it. They don't live like that. In fact, they get older, but they don't let go. They hold on to their vitality and power more fiercely as they get older. But the truth is, why is it? And why don't we? Well, I think it's because of the mind control and programming that for many of us starts when we are kids in school and in church. But I see images and examples of seniors who have health, vitality, and physical well-being all around me. This means it's a choice and not the way it has to be. It's very true that our thoughts and beliefs create our reality, and we aren't always aware of how this is happening until we see the evidence showing up as a broken life, difficulty, challenge, lack, and limitation. But by then it's harder to undo, but it can still be undone. I saw a YouTube video yesterday. It was an interview with a young lady named Erin Lyons, Lyons. I know some of you are going to go to YouTube and look her up, and you should. She's a very gifted psychic, and her gifts are amazing because she also speaks light language. And she mentioned that she's teaching her son Aramaic, which is an ancient language, so I guess she speaks that too. And she channels source, spirit. and her guides spontaneously as part of her inline communication, her conversation, instead of going into trance or stepping out of herself to do it. So, listening to her, I realized that that's how my psychic gifts work too. But for most of my life, I couldn't believe that I could be that directly connected. And as I thought that, I heard Spirit say, "Are you kidding me? I am you, and you are me." Well, duh. I believe that and I know that, but I really didn't think about it until Spirit said, are you kidding me? We are one. There is no separation. I realize the problem has been because I'm from a generation, the baby boomers, that was discouraged from that pure God connection. We were programmed not to believe we were spirit embodied. My generation was taught to believe we were unworthy sinners, or whatever that is, and not to question our religious teachings or think of ourselves as anything more than a lowly human. I always thought, who am I to think that God would channel anything directly through me? People around me reinforced that belief in my unworthiness, so I hid the ability to talk to spirit and to channel that energy directly. I suppressed it until God's voice became just a whisper. It was my intuition, which I always listened to, but I also thought it was always very personal and not to be shared with the world. With all the negative programming to undo and overcome, it's taken me decades to truly know myself and step into my divine beingness with confidence and certainty, regardless as to what others said or thought. Once I decided to step out, the energies of resistance and societal oppression intensified. It was as though something wanted to keep me suppressed and keep me from stepping out and speaking any truth on a level that would help anyone else, let alone myself. I found myself attracting more people who put me in a box and tried to keep me small, and for a long time, it worked. I felt more disconnected and unheard than ever. I've endured decades of subconscious oppression and control by others who see me and think of me as weak and less than. They weren't aware of what they were doing. It was only their reaction to what I was expressing as I bought into the hype and gave up my power. I was always independent and successful, and I lived a life of financial independence until about 20 years ago. I remember when the breakdown started, and I've spoken about that a little bit in my other previous morning moments. Grant you, there were extenuating circumstances that contributed to the decline, and I'm not beating myself up because of how I handled it or didn't handle it. There were also karmic lessons in the process that needed to be worked through, and I see that now. I'm still a work in progress as I come back to myself, and now that I've embraced that truth, the inner changes are happening. They're triggered and energized by where we are now. It's part of the ascension process. I've been teaching spirituality for many years, but the awakening that's happening within me now is very surprising, but it's also familiar at the same time. I started a book years ago about my descent into the darkness after my ex died, and I'd gone through the economic downturn and the loss of my financial independence, and then, of course, all that went with that. I also always intended to finish the book. In fact, the last pages of that book talk about, and then everything went dark. But the rest of the story, I had no idea it was going to take 20 years to get to the end. But I may finish it now. Maybe. I haven't made the decision as to whether I'm going to pick up that topic again in the way I need to complete the book. But who knows? Maybe I will. A lot has happened in the last uh, a lot of what happened was coupled with depression, in addition to menopause, as I was in my middle 50s. I've had bouts of depression as far back as I can remember, but I always managed it. And I did talk about how when this stuff started, how I was so depressed back in the early 2000s, around the time that my ex and I broke up and then he died and my sister died. The depression was so deep that I was praying to die. I didn't want to live. And this went on for a while until my guides, Yeshua and the angels stepped in and said, "Oh no, you're not going to die. We're going to help prop you up and help you keep going because there's still a lot for you to do." And it was at that time when I stopped asking to die and start asking a different question. Those episodes made me vulnerable and I suffered mostly in silence. Well, there wasn't really anybody around me to talk to, and it was very, very tough. And it caused a lot of damage. But I'm happy to say it's finally healing. One of the things I'm doing now is connecting with other aspects of me. You know, people talk about the other selves who are living the life you want or who've never experienced the trauma and difficulties that you have. These are our other selves that have a different timeline, and I'm drawing strength and courage from them. I'm also connecting with the stronger, happier selves who are living and doing and being me. And I want to embrace that now. Now, we usually think that means connecting with a self in the future or one on a different timeline that we don't know about. But I'm discovering that's not necessarily so. In reality, time isn't linear. It's all happening in the here and now, in this one eternal moment. It occurred to me that one of the selves that was living the life of independence, abundance, and affluence that I'm recreating was my younger self, my younger me, someone that I know and remember well. I can access her energy and experience even easier than one from another timeline because I remember it. It's still very fresh in my mind. So, in addition to reaching out to other selves on other timelines that I have to find or hope to connect to, I'm reaching out to her first, at least to start. She's closer and more vivid in my memory and holds the characteristics that I need right now. She's beautiful, strong, smart, courageous, and capable. And as I look at her from here, she was unstoppable. My family used to always talk about how they couldn't understand how I could do things and make things happen, and always was pursuing a goal and realizing that goal. It was automatic for me back then. I didn't have to think about it or do it. I just did it. So I'm spending time with her. I'm getting to know her again. At the same time, as an elder her, I'm healing the events and experiences that contributed to her becoming the me that I am today. It's a coming together that's hard to explain, but it's very powerful as it's happening. You know, as enlightened, awakened beings, we spend a lot of time energy healing our past hurts, going through ancestral healing, but we don't focus much on the strengths and positive things about our younger selves and our past. I think this makes it more difficult to heal the past hurts because we are too focused on what went wrong and we don't include the positive, supportive aspects of what went right. What you focus on grows and expands. I know that, and most of us do. So, this one sided focus throws the healing out of balance, and I think that's why it makes it so hard. I already know what hurt me, but I'd forgotten about how powerfully I rose from the so-called ashes of these events and became stronger and wiser every time I went through and overcame a challenge. In retrospect, I can see how I contributed to creating the circumstances I'm overcoming now. Watching myself in the video I posted a few weeks ago where I spoke on forgiveness is freedom, was a wake-up call. That that was me. You know, I remember in vivid detail what I was going through that day, and I looked strong, capable, and ready to step into my new career. Instead, a few weeks later, I fell off the cliff. as my divorce became a battleground of verbal violence and backstabbing from my ex. I see that the problem was I didn't have my established career to fall back on as I'd always had in the past. I'd recently retired and was counting on my new career to sustain me, but it wasn't established yet. So as things progressed, the divorce being so financially devastating, the real estate and economic downturn prevented me from bouncing back this time. And I thought it was me. Now I'm creating something new, and it's been very challenging and overwhelming, but at least I know that I can. I've had to go deep and find the strength, the courage, and clarity to keep going despite the experiences I'm having now, because they're very discouraging too. And as our world is transforming and transcending, as we're in the chrysalis and trying to struggle our way out the way the butterfly does once the transformation is complete, it's like a double-edged sword experience. But this is why I'm here. This is what the angels were holding me together for that 20 years ago when they came to me and asked me to ask a different question instead of asking to die. They said, no, there's something left for you to do. This is part of my life purpose, and I'm supposed to use what I've learned and my life experience to help others, which is what I'm trying to do now. I'm supposed to heal and open my heart again, to love and be loved, to have and give unconditional, spirit-guided love. Unconditional love is the key to everything. It's how we create and manifest, and it's the substance of creation, of life here on earth. I'm learning to trust again with discernment and wisdom this time, but my intuition is guiding me as to how to do that. There's an old Japanese proverb, often translated as Nana Karobi Yaoki. I hope I pronounced that right. Basically, it means fall down seven, get up eight. It's a Bible verse too, and I think it's in the book of Proverbs. Now, I don't know who said it first because the Japanese culture is older than the 2,000 years of Christianity. So maybe it's something they picked up from the martial artists, of ancient Japan. I don't know, but it's the key to everything. What it means is it doesn't matter how many times you fall down, as long as you get up one more time. And I'm getting up again. You got to get up too, at least one more time. Thanks for listening. Love and hugs. This is Sophia Lynn. Till next time, be blessed, and I'll see you then.